This Paragon rework is so hard to understand. If only there was an easier way for me to create strong Paragons. Hi, I'm JWags. Say goodbye to all your setup woes with my all-new Paragon. No. This tower is useless. But with 3 shots from my Paragon, bang, 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 and it solos those F-bads. Look at how it improves this dodgy dinghy. Bang, bang, bang. Goodbye, boss. Useless Paragons. Bang, bang, bang. I love you, Paragon. You can even use it to do your logs free play. Bang, bang, bang. There, it's easy again. All new Paragon. Now with extra tier 5s and totems for bonus degree power. Paragons. They are legendary monkeys that absorb the souls of dozens to become godlike behemoths that possess an improved set of abilities from their 3 base paths. Most of the Paragon's stats are determined by its degree number, which is the funny little number that pops on top of its head after being summoned. This number can vary wildly depending on how well you complete their laundry list of requirements, and with the assistance of some complicated mathematics. While this system is complicated to use for a funny balloon popping game, in this video I aim to provide some simple strategies for maximizing your use of Paragons. But enough of me stalling. Let's get right into it.
Fuck you!
Before I jump into Paragons, I have to explain that one annoying subject. Maths. Look, I don't enjoy maths either, so instead of overloading you with a bunch of equations, I'll give you an oversimplified version of what you need to know. When creating a Paragon, the degree number is determined by its power level, which is a hidden stat between 0 and 200,000. It starts at 0 with just 3 base tier 5s, but you can increase the number of points you have by adding some cannon fodder, 100 upgrades to said fodder, loads of money, and 16.2 million confirmed pops. You can also increase the Paragon's power by adding extra tier 5s and Geraldo's Paragon totems. Adding all these together you get 160,000 power, which translates to a degree 91 Paragon. But to get the coveted degree 100 Paragon, you need to invest into 7 extra tier 5s in co-op, or 20 Paragon totems if you're alone. Just be wary that Paragon degree calculation is like your average RPG experience system. The first few degrees are piss easy to get, but the gap between degrees progressively requires more grinding to achieve. But with that out of the way, obligatory disclaimer, and let's jump into the Paragons. Apex Plasma Master. Oh boy. With the recent rework, the Apex Plasma Master has gotten a lot better price to performance wise. However, it still has the same overarching issues like poor bat damage and its bouncing projectiles being extremely map dependent. Still, if you want to use this Paragon, it's one of the easiest and cheapest to power up. For the pops requirement, you can't go wrong with a Plasma Monkey Fan Club setup. Just place them where they'll deal the most damage and spam the abilities. Tiers is also easily done with the Max Fan Club setup, but you only need 20 220s or 15 240s at the bare minimum to fulfill this requirement. And lastly, cash. Being the cheapest Paragon, it only requires 49 240s, which is quite doable compared to all the other Paragons. But if you have the 14 240s from before, roughly this much on the slider will max out the contribution. But for those looking for a cheap Paragon, 20 220s are also a decent alternative. But I recommend placing money into tier 3 or 4 upgrades rather than the slider since it's way more efficient. When testing the Apex against Bloonarius, it genuinely surprised me. A degree 64 easily beat a regular tier 5. but if I placed it a little closer to the action, I probably would have been able to beat it a lot faster. In free play, the Apex unsurprisingly performed really poorly. Degree 1 hit a brick wall at round 138 due to there being too many fortified DDTs for it to pop, while Degree 100 lost at round 165 due to the overwhelming amount of RBE on the screen. I know it's very original to rank Paragons on a tier list, but for the sake of comparison, the Apex is still a D tier Paragon. It's too easily overwhelmed by tougher Merle class balloons, and it isn't the best choice for bosses unless the conditions are right. But at least it has excellent cleanup considering its balls bounce across the entire map. Moving on, we have the Glaive Dominus. Although the recent rework did reduce the Glaive's free play potential, it is now a lot more usable and affordable during boss events. Gathering pops and tiers for the Glaive Dominus is pretty easy. Just place the tier 5s along with at least 15 240s, and bam, 16.2 million pops. The biggest problem with the Glaive is money. All of the Boomerang's tier 4s are quite cheap, which is good for normal play, but a nightmare for contributing cash to the Paragon. To max out cash, you need at least 120 240s to meet the required 825k. Obviously, nobody wants to do that, so you're better off placing at least 15 240s and cash slider the rest. For reference, I needed this much with 15 240s on the map. But if you're looking for a cheap Degree 20, Punji's strat of 25 220s is great, if you like playing it safe. But if you're a professional risk taker like me, just place 20 220s and upgrade as many of them that you can afford to 240s until the boss gets into range. And if you pulled it off right, you get a much stronger Paragon at very little risk. The main reason I encourage getting a higher tier is due to the Glaive Dominus no longer benefiting from the sellback bonus provided by favoured trades. So it's often more cost and time effective in the long run to invest in a Degree 25 to 30 rather than buying it for every single tier. Testing it on phase, a Degree 26 can solo a tier 3 and 4 regular, and a tier 3 elite, which is extremely good for its price. And for free play, Glaive Dominus absolutely smoked the Apex. Degree 1 lasted 165 rounds, which funnily enough, it was the same round that the Degree 100 Apex lost on. While Degree 100 lasted until round 200 due to the scaled F-Bads being way too much of a damage sponge. For how useful the Glaive is for bosses, I'm going to give it a high B. The main reason why it is an A is due to its free play performance and reliance on the slider. Moving to military, we have Navar of the Seas. My points still stand from the last time I covered Navar over a month ago. Not that it changed much since then. It's extremely effective for its price, and it has strong uses in both free play and boss events. Unlike other Paragons, all Buccaneer tier 4s have the potential of being good sacrifices for the Navar. Top Path is objectively the best for cash spent and consistent pops, but it comes at the cost of dropping your FPS to 1. The hooks provided by the mill path can produce a lot of pops in a short period of time by spamming your ability key. And the bottom path produces a lot of cash, which can be converted to power on top of its pop count. You may struggle with cash in tiers though, since most maps don't have large bodies of water. But if you are desperate for a max tier Paragon, kiddie pools and the slider are your best friend. For bosses, the Navar has excellent DPS, while also coming with the utility of global drunken midgets, along with extremely quick Moab hookins. And in free play, the Navar essentially gives you a free ticket to round 200, with the occasional use of the big claw ability on bads. Degree 1 lasted just over 200 rounds, and Degree 100 lasted to round 242. And for ranking, I still see the Navar as an A tier Paragon. It is only held from S due to its dependency on water, and being one of the hardest to power up without the slider or Geraldo. Next up, we have the Goliath Doomship. Goliath Doomship lives up to its name, being the strongest and most expensive Paragon in the game. but be prepared to pay upwards of 3.5 to 4 million in total costs to max out this beast of an aircraft. For pops, just go with the big plane. The other two are okay I guess, but their DPS isn't as strong or reliable in free play. And for the other two requirements, I recommend placing at least 15 204 Spectres, but I typically wouldn't cut corners when it comes to sacrifices. So just fill the map with them, give the Paragon a healthy cash injection, and call it a day. And for those who are curious, it takes 93 204s to max out cash, so good luck, unless you regularly like breaking the laws of physics.
Wasn't Sam Hill?
Due to its cost, a high degree Doomship is only obtainable during the last tier of a boss. But the sheer presence of the Goliath makes elite bosses a lot easier to take down. The Goliath's high raw damage is already top tier, but the fact that it can bypass most boss gimmicks is the cherry on top. Just remember to purchase the Navar for its carrier flagship buff, use Wing Monkey if you have it, and regularly adjust the targeting of its ability. And for free play, the Goliath surprisingly underperformed compared to the Navar. After 30 minutes of attempts on both tests, I found that the Degree 1 lasted 188 rounds, and the Degree 100 lasted 234 rounds, putting it in second place next to the Navar. Overall, the Goliath Doomship belongs in S tier. Its near infinite range and high burst damage is amazing for bosses, and its base rockets can deal some serious damage if microed well. However, its high cost and slightly weaker free play does bring it closer to the Navar. And now we have the complete assassin package. Ascended Shadow. Ascended Shadow has always been the underdog Paragon for quite some time, but its recent buffs and the Paragon rework has really defined it as a strong camo specialist with excellent global damage. However, my recommendations for this Paragon differ depending on what game mode you are playing. For free play, nothing can beat a Shinobi setup. The raw damage provided by the tier 5s will get you to 16.2 million in no time, and the raw number of Shinobis can be more than enough for tiers. And for bosses, I recommend placing down your tier 5s early to farm pops. Then before you upgrade, purchase 20 022 ninjas and invest some money into bottom path upgrades or the cash slider to increase the Ascended Shadow's power. Degree 30 is usually good for most tier 4 bosses, while a degree 40 and above is good for tier 5s. With the appropriate degree, the Ascended Shadow is an extremely strong boss killer for its price. It's similar to the Navar since it has strong base and global damage, but it also comes with the luxury of being able to be placed anywhere on the map. And on top of that, its specialised camo bonuses completely shut down phase. And during free play, Ascended Shadow held its own for a very long time due to its permanent Grand Sabo and global damage. Degree 1 lost at round 188, while Degree 100 went all the way to 239, placing the Ascended Shadow in between the Navar and Goliath. On the tier list, the Ascended Shadow rightfully belongs in mid A tier. While it does trade blows with the Navar when it comes to utility and free play potential. Personally, I find the sheer power of one-shotting hooks to be slightly better than the permanent Grand Sabo. And wrapping up Magic Monkeys, we have Magus Perfectus. Look, I do share the hive mind opinion that Magus is bad, but considering it got some chonky buffs with the 39.0 update, I'm going to revisit the Magus with a blank slate. At the surface level, Magus is very similar to the Goliath, since it's expensive and requires a lot of micro to make full use of its damage. But instead of global range, the Magus comes with an extra ability, and Big Bird on anabolic steroids. While this sounds powerful on paper, in practice, the Magus's maximum power is extremely hard to achieve. All of the wizard's tier 5s are decent at grinding pops, but when it comes to cash and tiers, it goes downhill very quickly. While 420s are objectively the best for tiers and cash spent, 13k per wizard is pocket change to its requirement of 2.5 million cash. Combined with the wizard's large footprint, it makes the Magus' sacrifices redundant compared to the newly introduced slider. So to be honest, just place the bare minimum of 15 420s or 20 220s and slider the rest. For bosses, the Magus performed okay. While it still lives in the shadow of the Goliath, Magus's burst damage shouldn't be slept on while the boss is still in range. And in free play, the Magus ranked below average for both tests. Degree 1 only lasted 182 rounds, while Degree 100 only lasted 223 rounds. I'm probably going to cop a bit of flack for this, but I feel Magus currently belongs in high B or low A with proper micro. Its high burst damage is extremely useful for taking down bads and bosses, but it sits in an awkward price bracket, and it's by far the hardest Paragon to power up. Finally, we have everyone's favourite tradie, Master Builder. I understand that the Master Builder is one of the more controversial Paragons, since it leaves out a lot of what makes the base engineer good. But taken as a raw DPS Paragon, the Master Builder is decent, but a bit on the pricey side. I'll leave a more in-depth discussion of the Paragon for the engineer video, but the main features of the Master Builder are its exploding Mega Sentries, ramping self-overclock, and mower pinning nails. The exploding sentries are good for boss events for their high burst damage, and the latter two are better in free play when you have enough time and rounds to make full use of the Paragon's abilities. But let's get into construction. The best way to farm pops is an XXL trap, since it can practically one-shot most Moab class balloons regardless of RBE. Sentry Champion can also put some work in if you give it some buffs and space. And Ultra Boost is good to have in general, but make sure to fully overcharge your other tier 5s. For tiers, the most efficient option is 16 240 overclocks. But if you're just looking for tiers, 2202s or 022s are a good alternative. For cash, the Master Builder suffers from the same issues as the Magus, but to max it out you need 120 240s, so Cash Slider is your best friend here. For bosses, your opinion may change depending on if you're a competitive player, but from my casual perspective, it's decent, but not the best or cheapest Paragon out there. Its nail damage is passable at best, but if you micro the Mega Sentries well, you can deal some serious damage in a short period of time. But the real strength of the Master Builder's abilities is in free play. Its Degree 1 lasted 189 rounds, while Degree 100 went as far as round 223, which is decent, but far from the best. I know A tier is getting bloated, but the Master Builder is deserving of that rank. Its damage and utility are nice, but it's a lot more expensive than the other A tier Paragons, so it sits below them. Well, that's all I have to say about Paragons until the next major rework. I wanted to make this video purely to test the limits of the Paragons, but then it turned into this beast of a project. Paragons are already complicated enough, but covering 7 of them at a base level is very time consuming. When other Paragons like the Sub come out, I will review them individually and add them to the list. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.